everybody, I'm Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales, and this is Giselle Sacramento, and we're super excited to be here today at the first Pinayista Summit. This is solid. We're super excited. They changed the scene for us. We got something special going on right here. I definitely want to introduce my colleague, my former student, but my colleague now, Dr. Giselle Sacramento. I first met Giselle a very long time ago. How many years ago?
14 years.
14 years ago, dang. We could have had a 14-year-old together. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I don't know if that's possible, but anyways, so I met Giselle. She came to me as a graduate student, or she wanted to be a graduate student, and she wanted to work on this thing called Pinayism. And to be quite honest, Pinayism was something I did when I was a lot younger, and when she came to me, I was like, okay, this is another opportunity to bring Pinayism back to life. And so I just want to say, I'm already going to cry. It's like only like a second in. I just want to say thank you to Giselle, because without Giselle, Pinayism would not have become what it has become today. And to be quite honest, then Pinayista wouldn't have become what it became today. And so I just want to say thank you, Giselle. I love you.
I love you too. And I want to introduce my co-host and colleague here today. This is Ate Allyson. I actually knew about Ate Allyson before I actually met her in person. In 2001, I went to a conference at UC San Diego. And one of the workshops I attended was on zine making. And it was in that workshop that I was introduced to this zine called Pinayism by Michelle Magalong. And in there was a definition of Pinayism. And it was my first introduction to Pinayism. And at first I didn't know how to apply it to my own life. But then when I was in school, I tried to write every single paper about Pinays and Pinay's experience. And then I wanted to get my master's in Asian American Studies. And so that's when I reached out. And Ate Allyson is a professor, a full professor at San Francisco State University. She has founded so many organizations, Pinoy Pinay Educational Partnerships, Community Responsive Education, and Teaching Excellence Network. And meeting you has changed my life. You know, when I was first introduced to Pinayism, I thought it was a theory, but it's really a way of life. It's a way of being. It's a way of loving. And I want to thank you for introducing Pinayism to all of our lives. And so I want to welcome you all to our Pinayism talk show. This is the talk show. So today we want to bring in our ancestors, and a lot of our work is informed by our lolas. And I want everyone here today to think about, who do you want to bring into this space? Who has inspired your work? They're with us today in spirit, and they help guide us in everything that we do. I also want to bring in our families. We are informed by our mothers, our sisters, and our children. And today the agenda is going to have two panels within this panel, right, within our talk show. The first panel is going to be an OG panel from the Pinay Power panel from the Association from Asian American Studies at Hawaii in 1998. This panel includes Joan May Cordova, Darlene Rodriguez, Emily Lawson, Ate Allyson, and in memoriam, Don Boholano Mabalon. The second panel are Pinays who are practicing Pinayism today in organizing in the arts, in mother scholarship, in queer Pinayism and theorizing of queer Pinayism, and in entrepreneurship. And so Before we get into our panels, we do want to define what Pinayism is. Pinayism is a radical Pinay sisterhood that connects global, local, and personal stories of Pinay struggle, survival, service, sisterhood, and strength to uplift ourselves mentally, physically, politically, and spiritually. And so I'm going to pass the mic.
Pass the clicker to me. Hello. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Giselle, for that. So the definition, has been a definition since 1995. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the second panel and where it comes from. But I really want to focus, and we have some new stuff for folks out there who have been following Pinayism for some time. We have some new stuff today, and we're going to focus primarily on Pinay, focusing primarily on radical Pinay sisterhood. Okay, so we're going to focus on radical Pinay sisterhood. So I'm having such a hard time because we're teachers and we love to pace, and so if I'm moving around in my chair, it's because I'm enjoying the moment right now. And I'm going to focus on primarily just teaching a couple of new concepts around Pinayism. So don't worry, you don't have to take notes or anything. You could totally just wait till the end, and we're going to give you the whole slide deck. We're going to give you a video. We're going to give you all this fun stuff. Okay? So I'll start off with talking about radical Pinay sisterhood. That's the real definition of Pinayism. So I'm going to start off with the word radical. And you can see that I have capitalized the R, the A, and the D. And that's going to be an acronym. If you know me well, that's my style. Okay, so we're going to focus on the word radical. Radical actually means roots. That's a really important concept. When we talk about Pinayista or we talk about Pinayism, there's a need to go back to your roots. And so I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with the R, which is reflect on your roots. And I mean your roots, not someone else's roots. So I don't mean in the ways in which we sometimes exploit indigenous cultures. I mean, go back to your own story. What's the story of your family? My cousin Glenda, who's here in the audience right now, woohoo, woohoo, she's doing some amazing projects, understanding the stories of our families. That's what I mean by radically going back to your roots. The A in the RAD acronym is analyze. Analyze systems that are oppressive. It is really important for us as Pinayistas to analyze systems that are oppressive because we perpetuate them in our work together. And so we have to not just criticize racism and sexism, but we also have to criticize capitalism, in which adds this competition between us. So we really want to be able to do that. When you want to be radical, you've got to reflect on your roots, you've got to analyze oppressive systems, and then I'm going to leave you with the third one, which is to determine yourselves. Do something. And that's the third piece of being radical. That word radical has been thrown around a lot these days because people are hella woke now. But really, what does radical mean? It's more than just posting something cute that's in the current trend of activism. You actually have to go and do this work internally as well. Okay? So that's what I mean by radical. So now I'm going to move to Pinay. So I said radical Pinay sisterhood. So the next one is Pinay. So as you can see, there's some amazing photos on here. One of the photos here is of course me and my homegirls, but then I also want to point out this picture here because Don Mabalon gave me this picture on the left. It's a picture of the Filipina Sports Club, right? This is in the 30s. So Pinayistas, we've been doing this since the 30s at least. And so we really want to think about what does it mean to be Pinay. So I'm going to break down Pinay because sometimes we just use the word. We don't even know where it comes from, right? But Pinay actually means Filipina in the US. The term was first used in the United States. Actually, it's a decolonial term because it takes out the Philly, which represents King Philip. So really important that there's a reason why Pinay is a political term. Okay? So I'll break it down quickly. The words Pinoy and Pinay were first published in the 1920s in a publication at UC Berkeley. And Don Mabalon did all of this research, so I'm really quoting her work. And it was a decolonial act to take out the word Philly or the prefix Philly because it did reference King Philip, right? But it also added a Y for endearment. And that's really important to note because it's not just Pina, it's Pinay. And that means love. There's a concept of love in the word Pinay. The second piece I really want to point out is the word Pinay has the word inay in it. And the word inay means mother. We've recently lost our inay, who was my grandmother, my mother's mother, my daughter's great-grandmother. And the word Pinay has the word inay in it. And what I mean by inay is, yes, mother, but you don't need to birth a child to be a mother. You don't need to birth a child out of your pek-pek, that thing, to be a mother, right? And really important that Pinay has that element of it, the caring of people, the alagaan of people, right? So the last piece of the concept of Pinay is it's not Filipina-American. We actually resist the concept of hyphenation because that would mean that Filipina is an adjective of American, but Pinay actually brings those concepts together. It brings those identities together, which actually then means that we're both, right? And so that's why we do this idea of calling ourselves Pinay and then in essence Pinayistas. So I'm going to focus on the next piece, which is the last piece of my section, is sisterhood, right? This notion of sisterhood. You can see some big old pictures of lots and lots of Pinays there. One of them is from the summit last year, and then the other one is from the Us video, which Ruby Ibarra brought together a ton of Pinays. Like, these are moments of sisterhood. But sisterhood is really important, and I want to just pause because sometimes we're not really great at it. Sometimes we feel good at it, and then sometimes we just totally abandon it. And so I'm going to drive a few concepts home with sisterhood. The first one is love. This idea that we are loving each other ourselves. Because if we don't love ourselves, it's very difficult to love each other. So really important, the concept of love. The first equation of Pinayism back in the day was pain plus love equals growth. And love was sort of the center point, right? But I realized over time that there was a need to actually think deeper about this equation. And then it became pain plus love plus reflection equals liberation, because we needed a goal together. And part of our sisterhood means that we need to actually fight for freedom or kalayaan, right? And then the last piece is our sisterhood has to be rooted in kapwa. And what I mean by that is basically, I am you and you are me. Whatever happens to Giselle, like, I feel that shit. Like, there's no way that I'm not gonna feel something, you know, when she's going through it. And so every time you were on my couch, a little bit of tears, I was feeling you, you know?
A little bit.
a lot of tears. I was feeling that, you know? Like, and so it's really important to know that. That also means that if I hurt Giselle, I am hurting myself. When I cancel Giselle, I'm canceling myself. So I need to really think about those things when I'm thinking about sisterhood. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean we're always gonna agree, doesn't mean we can't argue, doesn't mean that we, you know, can't teach each other stuff, doesn't mean that we can't sometimes have to call each other in. But it's all in this notion of sisterhood, this radical Pinay sisterhood. So I love that, I love you, and I really just wanna make sure that we all got that down, because we're going to be living that through this thing called Pinayista, this radical Pinay sisterhood.
And so we just want to bring it back to this definition. So Pinayism is a radical Pinay sisterhood that connects the global, local, and personal stories of Pinay struggle, survival, service, sisterhood, and strength to mentally, physically, politically, and spiritually uplift us, right? And uplift ourselves and uplift each other.
Exactly.
Right? And so through the theorization of this term, we came up with P's. Yep. Allyson likes alliteration. And so when we were writing our article, Practicing Pinayist Pedagogy, we came up with these P's, and it's all within this umbrella of Pinayism praxis. And when I say praxis, I mean theory plus reflection plus action, right? And so the first P is process. Pinayism is an individual and communal process of liberation, humanization, decolonization, and it's something that we do individually, internally, but it's also something we do in community, and we do with one another, right? The next P is place. It's a place where Pinay epistemologies, like how we know what we know, are at the center of the discourse, are at the center of the dialogue, are at the center of our discussions and our organizing. The next P is production and programs. And it includes critical cultural productions, whether in the arts, literature, within our communities, of Pinay stories, right? And telling our experiences. And lastly, pedagogy, right? It's a critical pedagogy. Pinayism is a critical pedagogy that does, one, it teaches and learns, where we teach and learn critical Pinay studies, and it's also where we mentor Pinayistas and social justice educators, artists, entrepreneurs. And so we want to transition to our next panel, our panel within our panel. And this next panel, we're asking this OG Pinay Power panel, what inspired Pinayism? This panel took place in 1998. And I'm going to call on our Pinayism panelists. And the questions that we want to bring to our panelists, and before I get to the panelists, because there are all these Pinays who have inspired Pinayism, and so if you read the first Pinayism article, everyone is named who is on this screen, but I want to highlight them one more time. And for our Pinayism panel, I want to ask, what inspired Pinayism? Like, you were there, 1998. What was it like? You know, and I know Auntie Joan May is on, and I want to ask Auntie Joan May, what was it like to be there? What inspired your work to create this panel?
Manang Joni, are you there?
Okay, hi, I'm here. So, I actually wrote something, and that happened to be my opening statement, but I remember that, you know, after years of being the youngest on projects, often the only Filipina in East Coast settings, in 1988, I was the moderator. I was the Manang Joni, the Auntie Joni, and it was at the National Conference of Association of Asian American Studies during a year when Filipinos in the association were really marginalized and disrespected. And the Pinay Power panel was like the highlight that brought the light to that conference for me. It was like our Pinay voices, poetry, histories, groundbreaking Pinayism theory were like transforming this space, and it was so, so exciting. Em knows that sometimes I just like to sit back and bask in the moment. And there's a picture that you showed earlier, and I'm just looking up at Allyson and Dawn, and I just want to hold on to the memory forever, just sending so much love into that space, wanting to support the generation, working behind the scenes. That's, yeah, working behind the scenes. In the West Coast Pinay traditions of elders and spirits who had nurtured me by paying it forward, they always found money for scholarships for students, and I tried to continue behind the scenes. And so years after that, I would still keep teaching and promoting all of your work and just draw on this strength of this sisterhood that's grounded in family, community, ancestors forever. So,
Manang Joni, I don't know if I ever got to tell you this, but without you, like, Pinayism would not have become what it has become. I really don't think I would have had the confidence without you always kind of pushing me into the limelight and always calling me a theorist. I was very insecure as a young Pinay. And so it was really important for me to have you there. I just want to say that it means the world to me, and I know it meant the world to Dawn too.
I mean, look at my face in that picture. It's like when Jesse texted me that, it's like, okay, I don't need any more comments. Look, it just says it all. I'm just looking up at all of you with so much love. It's so impressed, inspired.
I mean, till this day, you are always, you know, putting us in front of people and saying, these are the Pinays that you need to listen to. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
I remember my first AAAS. We took a picture, the three of us. I don't know if you remember this, but Auntie Joan May posted it. And in her caption, she said, 3 generations of Pinay scholars. And at the time, I was a master's student. And I didn't realize that it was really foreshadowing what would come for my life. Now I'm a doctor, I'm a professor of ethnic studies, and I think that was a really defining moment in my life to see myself part of this lineage. So thank you, Auntie Joan May.
Oh. And now Emily's phone's national president, and Darlene's going to do her poem. It's like, oh, and then they were with Auntie Dorothy. So I spent 25 years on the East Coast by challenging white supremacist patriarchal systems, and I brought all your spirits and all your words. I used to play, what's that CD, Allyson, with your poem? I played that for all these students.
Infiltration?
School. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's Re-Evolve.
Oh, Re-Evolve. Well, I
That's
used
on
to play
Spotify,
those.
everyone.
And Dawn's.
So I want to thank you, Auntie Joan May.
All your stuff.
And I want to move on. Manang Darlene, could you share with us what was it like to be there? What inspired Pinayism?
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time, so the poem that I wrote for the panel, I think speaks to us now. It's part of it is in Cebuano. It's Ako nakigsulti, I am speaking. Ako nakigsulti, I am speaking. For all of us here today in this room, but especially for those who could not be here. I stay tired of being spoken about. I'm tired of being spoken to. And for sure, I'm tired of being spoken for. You guys thinking the same as me? I think what's been said of how we've all just spoken, and my mom comes to mind. She who usually shrugs off a question, holds it all inside. Her life at times seems a long, permanent sigh. Ako nakigsulti, this is something she has taught me. I stand here in Hawaii, searching for a way. This is one tough place, one tough crowd, and this is home. I am glad to see everyone in it. We give life to these words, we give words to these lives, and why not? I remind myself I never know the right phrase, but I get them. Ako nakigsulti, I hanay from Toni Morrison, from us all being here today, so I no forget. We have always been imagining ourselves.
Oh,
Darling,
It was
your voice.
so perfect.
It was a
haven't heard
tough
your
time.
voice in so long.
It was a tough time, like it is now. You know, Filipinos at the time, we took our power and we said no. We said, we say no. I think of Manang Steffi for all those years who would sit by herself and raise her voice, and no one gave her the time of day. They didn't take her seriously. They took us seriously that conference, and it's been going ever since. More power to everyone. We got to keep going. Ako nakigsulti, we've been speaking. We will continue to speak. Wherever we go, in business, in education, at home. So I'm so grateful to be here. So just a reminder.
Oh.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this, but Manang Joni's calling from the Philippines. And then we have Darlene who's calling from Hawaii. And so I just really want to appreciate that we're totally more than bi-coastal. We're actually
global.
Global. And I really want to say that I miss your voice, Darlene. Like just hearing you share your poem brings me back home, literally.
Thank you, Darlene. And next, I'd like to bring in Manang Emily. If you could also share what inspired Pinayism.
I want to say thank you so much to the Pinayista organizers for sponsoring this summit, and to you, to Jocel and Mata Allyson for inviting us to be part of your talk show. I will just speak for 1 minute because when we had the 1998 panel, I remember I went over time. I think I did a poem, and I think I did my diva poem, which I'll do later today in the activism panel. And I think I did an excerpt from my War Brides research. But I want to say that what really inspired us is everything that Darlene and Joni just said, but also Dawn said that the Old Boys Network is always citing themselves, always, whether they're Asian American or whether they're white, they're always citing themselves. So we, as Pinay scholars, we have to start citing ourselves. And so we did, and we still do. She also wanted to establish, at the time, for years, we were struggling for the Committee for Filipino Studies at UCLA when we were students at UCLA. And they were struggling to save Tagalog classes and struggling for a Filipino Studies minor or major, which they just actually got like this year. And now, at that time in 1998, Dawn wanted us to establish Pinay studies. Not Filipino studies, not just Filipino American studies, not just Filipina/O. We didn't even have an X back then. Not just Filipino studies, but Pinay studies, Filipina American women's studies. And I think that's how we were able to pull that Pinay Power panel together for the 1998 Association for Asian American Studies Conference. And you'll see from those slides, we repeated them again at following FONS conferences over many, many years. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Manang Emily. And it's so timely to hear this, that Dawn really wanted to Pinay studies. Right now, I'm an assistant professor of ethnic studies at Cal State East Bay. And we were just talking, I really want to institute a Center for Critical Pinay Studies. And so that's in the works. We really want to, expand all of the research and really document all the stories of Pinay experience. And so thank you, OG panel from 1998. It was really this panel and your work that has inspired all of us here today. And Pinayista wouldn't be here without your foundation. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, everybody, for coming through. Actually, Emily, are you in Michigan right now?
Actually, I'm calling you from Kickapoo land, occupied Kickapoo territory in Fort Worth, Texas. But I am teaching remotely in Michigan, too.
I have to always ask because I'm not sure. But I do know that you are teaching in Michigan. So thank you for calling in. I don't know if you see the picture that's on right now, but that's the last time we were all together. And I just want to say that Dawn is with us today. She's always with us. She's been at every single summit, and we always bring her with us. And to be honest, like a lot of this, what we're experiencing today would not be possible without Dawn. So thank you, everybody. So we're gonna transition into the second part of our talk show. I should have mentioned earlier that the people who we're citing here, there's about, I don't even know how many women we put on that thing, but this article was from 1995. I think the one that you all were sent through email was published in 2000, but the actual original article is from 1995, Maganda magazine, and all of these women were part of it. I was just talking to my cousin Glenda. She was actually only 16 years old. She's a mother of 4 now. But like 16 years ago, 16 years ago? No, 25 years ago, you were 16 years old. Yeah. So I just want to make that known that this is 25 years ago. So this is a 25-year-old panel in the making, right? So we're going to move on to the next piece, which is not what inspired Pinayism, but what Pinayism inspired. And so this is the next piece. As you can see, these Pinay colleagues of mine will be joining us. I'm going to start with talking to Irene Dillier. Are you there?
Hi.
I can't actually see your face, so I can only hear your voice.
It says I'm at Gina Marco right now, but Gina and I are on the same computer, so.
Oh, okay.
Ako si Irene.
Ako si Irene. Nice. I know, I imagine you wearing lavender, like a lavender jumpsuit. Am I reading
exactly right? Yes.
Okay. All right. So my question for you, Irene, is how do you practice Pinayism? But before I do that, I'm going to kind of lean over to Giselle because she has a story about your thesis.
Okay.
So when I was a student at SF State, I was working on my master's, and then I stumbled upon this master's thesis called Pinayista, Her Art, a Fist. And the author of this master's thesis was Irene Dillier. And I checked it out, and 15 months later, I had to return it. So I checked it out again, and so I kept checking it out until I had to return it so I could graduate. And so I carried your thesis with me all through my graduate school experience working on my master's at SF State. And so thank you for writing your thesis. It has inspired my work, and it's inspired all of us.
And it only comes full circle, Josil, because Allyson was my thesis chair, and I just revisited my master's yesterday because I was going to refer to it for the kickoff. And at the end, it was like, this doesn't cover this, but someone should do Pinayism pedagogy. And lo and behold, the reader for all those years would do that. So I also want you to know that I met you while you were doing your thesis at Chalugs. And what?
That's right.
Shout out Chalugs and Chel, who is one of the original Pinayistas. So it's beautiful. And this is exactly what it's all about. So I was asked to just do a quick 2 minutes on Pinayism in organizing and arts. And I know the question was, what do I do to practice Pinayism in those spaces? But I feel like maybe this is me in true essence, but I want to bring in Pinays that are actually on the ground doing the work all the time, probably not even afforded the chance to be in this conference right now because there's hella work to be done right now. There's a lot of art to be done that's going to be moving us forward in such a critical year. So I feel like I want to use my time for that. And that, I think it at the core is a Pinayist value. Shout out to the Pinay scholars who also use poetry to deliver their messages, because I start off this way just for the first 30 seconds or so. What is Pinayista in her element? Ingenuity of survival and art or craft or practice. We know mastery and we know excellence. We define and redefine aesthetics. It is responsive, fluid, and born of conditions. Conditions that are lived or conditions that are aspired, and in between the two, imagined. In her intersection, she is ignited, and we are creating some things of nothings all the time. Organizing and arts in a Pinayist context are reflections of each other. And how is the art and artifice a cultural site, a tool, a vestige, a catalyst, a memory? Arts is evidence of a movement. and evidence of invisibility made visible, a footprint across shores, an echo of screams or a late tita's laughter. So in this last minute, I wanted to bring in some folks by name that to me should be known, and in the raising up of who, their selfless work in the movement of organizing in the arts, and also artists. And I wanted to start because we're in 10th Street here in Soma, Filipinas, to give shout out in the legacy of Bullet X, that the leaders of Soma, Filipinas, and those who campaigned for the acknowledgement of the cultural district were Pinays. They're not named all the time, and they will not ask to be named most times. And we should acknowledge that on their backs we are here, and in their work they wanted to let the world know that Soma, Filipinas has been here. And so those are organizers, educators, workers, and residents like Tita Pearl, Bernadette C., Raquel Redondiez, Rachel Lastimosa, Angelica of Somcan, Carla of West Bay. I also wanted to give a shout out to our other NorCal Filipino capital, Daly City, where Manang Arlene Daos Magwal is holding it down there as the arts commissioner. I want to give a shout out across the bay to a circle of mamas in the Sama Sama cooperative who have created something of nothing and started the first cultural school, summer school for children. And then in the moment right now, Pinay students who are at the front lines at the consulate of a couple of months ago, opposing that in international resistance against the terror bill in the Philippines. Pinays at the front lines of Tatlong Bagsak, which created the trainer for conversations, necessary conversations for Black Lives Matter and addressing anti-Blackness in our community. I also want to shout out a Pinay strong board at Balay Creative, who is led by Kim Arteche Asibo, and arts organizations that are organized and strategized by our own Pinayist board member, Amy Espiritu. And then also in terms of the arts, in the dancerly footsteps of Alleluia Panis and the Alpha Ates of Barbara Jane Reyes, and the mail order brides, Jennifer Wofford, Cece Carpio, Sammy C., Irene of Bindlestiff, Same from Urban Indigenous, Ruby Ibarra, and Rocky Rivera as our modern Pinayist chant masters, if you will, the maestras of ceremonies. And then a definite call into the queer Pinay artists who have created Pinay liminality, who themselves are center in the in-between space, and them doing art that is always political. So I also just want to bring this then into an invitation for folks to call in Pinays who are doing arts and movement work in the chat. We need to know their names. If it's you, we need to know your name. This is not supposed to be an exhaustive and complete list, and I cannot name them all if you don't help us. So in the chat, if you want to name some, I'll just give you a glimpse of the future. Keep an eye on Mahalaya as she dances. She dances our stories. And Amihan of Excelsior, who sings. Bettina, one of my students at USF, who is creating tirelessly. And of course, the writers out there who I'm sure we have many books of in the legacy of Jessica Hagedorn. I personally was raised by Gangster Street Choir, so if without her, I wouldn't have had like a thing. Jen Soriano doing big things. Malika Garib, who is representing a mixed Pinay perspective through illustration. Trinidad Escobar, locating herself as a queer Pinay in comics. Mia Alvar, Gia Tolentino, Elaine Castillo, just to name a few. And that's it. Please uplift other Pinays who are doing the work, who are in the center of everything that is important for 2020, wielding power into movement. Thank you.
Irene, that was amazing. I want to make sure that I acknowledge like all these amazing women. I think actually this is inspiring me. Like, I know this says what Pinayism inspired, but also I'm being inspired here to even think about this idea of creating a list of all of these beautiful Pinays who are doing this work, not just in terms of organizing, but doing Pinayista work. So we should continue like to do something like that, maybe within the Critical Pinay Studies Institute that you'll create. Okay, thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
So I love you, sis.
Love you.
So sorry I can't see your face, so I'm just talking. I don't mean to talk over you. So I'm gonna move over to, who's my next person?
I think Janelle's on next.
Janelle's on next?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I like your voice. How are you, Janelle?
I'm doing well. How about you too?
You know, I haven't talked to you in so long.
I know.
Actually, I talk to you every day.
I know.
I'm currently working with Janelle on their thesis, which is focused on queer Pinay Pinexism. So how are you practicing this in your work and in your life?
Yes. First, I just want to thank you both for allowing me to be a part of this panel. I love Dr. Sacramento that you talk about, like you were in a picture, like seeing the 3 generations of Pinayism, and then just being able to be a part of this and hearing you all speak. I'm like, wow, I'm the 4th generation. Let's go. So thank you so much. But as a queer, gender fluid Pinex, one way that I practice Pinayism in queer communities is by not only centering the narratives of cisgender heterosexual Pinays, but also including in the center the narratives of queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes and Is. The reason being is I believe that Pinayism must and has the space to also care about the injustices and oppression that queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes go through, because sexism still impacts us. The only difference between cisgender heterosexual Pinays and queer, non-binary, transgender Pinexes is that we also have to face homophobia and transphobia in and out of the Filipinx community. This difference, though, should not be a barrier for us to be able to be in community with each other. Jennifer Loudon, Nina Pop, Tony McDade, Selena Reyes Hernandez, Mercy Mack, and Mia Green are just some QT bi POC who were murdered this past year due to the violence of homophobia and transphobia. And so I guess when we do not see our narratives at the forefront of Filipinx activism and or celebration, it is easy for us to feel like we are excluded from the Filipinx struggle. And so by centering our narratives, I hope this bridge between queer, I hope to build this bridge between queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes and the rest of the Filipinx community, so that we may stand in solidarity with each other. And so if you are hearing this and are thinking, I haven't included the narratives of queer, non-binary, and or transgender Pinexes in the spaces you are a part of, or feel like you don't know much about queer Pinex experience, that's honestly okay. You are human, and like every human, we are learning and growing every day. And you can decide to make that change by doing the following. 1, reflection. Reflect on your privileges as a cisgender and or heterosexual Pinay. How have you intentionally or unintentionally omitted the narratives of queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes? 2, recognize what spaces are you a part of that does not include the narratives of queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes? Are there queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes in leadership roles in those spaces? If not, why is that? And 3, reimagine. How can you utilize your privilege to help create those spaces for queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes, or include them in the leadership team? These are just a few things that we can do, but gender and sexuality is fluid and ever-changing. Therefore, being an accomplice towards the queer community is a lifelong commitment of learning and growing. And To combat the cis-white patriarchy narrative, we must also make space and fight for queer, non-binary, and transgender Pinexes as Pinayistas. Thank you.
That was amazing, Janelle. I've learned so much from you every day. I feel like I'm not sure who's the teacher sometimes. So I appreciate everything that you've taught me. I'm super excited to announce that Janelle, another colleague of ours, Celeste, and myself have a new piece coming out called Queer Pinayism, Queer Pinexism. So look out for that. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Janelle.
So we have two more. Okay. We're gonna go with Gina next, the creator of Pinayista.
And now she works with Mega. She was the one, and now she's doing the workshop. Wow. A wellness session.
Hey, Gina.
Oh.
Am I on mute? Am I on mute?
Am I muted?
Am I muted? Oh, wait. I'm on.
Oh, hi.
Is that Glenda behind you?
It is. We've got a little, I can't focus because there's twerking happening up here. But yes, hi, hello.
We love you, Gina. So, so big question is, how do you use Pinayism in the work that you do as an entrepreneur and also in your creation of Pinayista?
Woo. Okay. So first, in the spirit of Pinayism, I want to shout out how all of this began for me. When I was starting my business, and now all of a sudden, I started a business, I'm an entrepreneur, now what do? I want to shout out Angelica from Lead Filipino, and she was the one who invited me to present on a panel at the Fly Pinay Summit called Entrepreneurship. And that was the first time I had ever heard the word entrepreneur. And that entrepreneurship panel was inspired by Anna Marie Cruz in LA, who runs Entrepreneurship. And so I want to shout both of them out because it was them that I heard of this word entrepreneur, which gave me the first impetus to feel pride in myself as a Pinay entrepreneur. And that was so uplifting and empowering and really helped me find myself and understand, like, oh, this makes sense. This is what it means to be a woman of color entrepreneur, because it is different. It's a very unique experience. And so I'm so thankful to them for introducing that to me. And even now in this space that we've changed our name and we're now more open and broader to Pinayistas, everything that we've been doing and do is rooted in Pinayism. And even now during, coronavirus, I keep telling folks that, like, in my entrepreneurship and in running a business, I really needed to reframe the way that I thought about my business in order to really find sanity, find health, and find balance. Because here, like, I run an events company and the event industry is basically decimated. And I'm pivoting, I'm doing virtual events, and I'm trying so hard to keep my payroll going and keep my staff just like in business. But I'm so stressed because of everything that's happening. And I had an aha moment during quarantine a few months ago and the fact that this had to be an aha moment is ridiculous in and of itself, but I basically gave myself permission to work as hard and to get just as many clients as I needed in order to make payroll, to survive, to keep going. Whereas in this like capitalist structure of being an entrepreneur, we're taught that we need to make as much money as possible and book as many clients as we can and hustle, hustle, hustle. But in this space of coronavirus, it just was not possible because I can barely keep it together every day, getting up, feeling good, feeling whole. And I needed to give myself permission to do enough to be okay. And then after that happened, to stop, to rest and say no. And so even if people were still reaching out to me for work, I needed to give myself permission to say no and to look out for myself. And to me, that was like having to decolonize what it means to be an entrepreneur and rooting myself in Pinayism and like myself as a Pinay, to give myself permission. And I'm so thankful to that, because even in leading this organization, there's just so many Pinays that we're working with constantly with different ideas and different approaches, and we don't always get along. And I see hella Pinays, like we're gonna talk about this tomorrow on our cancel culture panel, but I see hella Pinays like in the same space and wanting to even compete with each other. And Pinayism is constantly rooting me in the like, no, we can all be in this space together. We can survive, we can thrive together, we can lift each other. We don't need to compete against each other. And it's Pinayism that's helping me stay rooted there.
Thank you for that. Oh, you got some screams in the background.
I got a crew.
I think it's important to shout out Anna Marie Cruz. Thank you for doing that. She's getting an award tonight with Search to Involve Filipino Americans. She's actually getting the Don Mabalon Award. And so we just want to shout you out, Anna Marie, if you're out there listening to us. Hey, you're our sister, you know, like, so Pinayism to you too. So thank you. Okay, so we got one more, right? Is Cheryl on?
Yes.
Is that you? Hey, Mama.
How are you all?
Oh, hey, Mama. I love this. Cheryl, we've been interacting via Google Doc recently, and just finished a very important piece that I'm hoping you'll get to talk about a little bit. But one thing we talked about earlier on this panel was the word Pinay having the word inay in it, which means mother. And that has really inspired us to think about what does it mean to be a Pinay mother scholar. And so I'm wondering how you use Pinayism in the world of mother scholarship.
Oh my goodness. Thank you everyone for having me here, and for Dr. Tintiangco-Cubales as well as Sacramento. I am lucky to be here because we have just written a paper together, and so no, what are you doing? Okay. This is Mother Scholarship.
Mother Scholarship.
Real deal. You know, when I first thought of Mother Scholar, it was funny because I really drew from a Filipino brother who talked about race class as in one, no hyphen, just one word, and that you can't talk about one without the other, that each mutually informs each other. So when I thought of the word Mother Scholar, years ago, I was really thinking about that, because when you get into the academy or any workforce, they always tell you, like, don't tell them you're a mom, or, you know, play that down as if it's something negative. And so, you know, the Pinay in me, it's just birthed out of this resistance. You know, when they were telling me to play it down, I put it in my signature, in my email, and I put it in my CV that I was a Mother Scholar, and I was quite proud. And I didn't think of the ramifications that would have led to for women to just be proud of that, and then to overlay, because there's so much issues of being a woman and having to mother and having to keep your career and publish and perish, and in an academic space that is just not very friendly to families, let alone women. But to overlay that with the Pinayism, and I think this is where I learned a lot from both of you all sitting there. Thinking about how Pinay is mother, and it is a part of being Pinay. So when I think of the Mother Scholar, I often always thought of me, and I have a teenage kumbala. She's a twin. There's twins. They're teenagers, and I think of my little Lisa right here. And at the same time, when I was writing this paper, I realized how much our mothers mean how we mother our own children. It's funny because, you know, I'm being raised here, and my grandmother, being faced with so much racism, taught us to always just speak English, you know, which led to language side in Tagalog. But I realized as I mother my own children, being monolingual, I'm constantly saying anak, I'm using phrases, because I realized that's how my mother mothered me. And we realize how much our mothers mean to us. I literally, though I'm a professor at the University of Kentucky, I live here in California, and because of COVID, I'm not commuting, but I do commute every so often. But I live here particularly because I live with my mom. And a part of me being a mother is also being a daughter and having that lineage connected from our grandmothers and our mothers to us and to our children. So I think what I've learned most about being a Pinayist mother scholar is that we can't think of just our unit in raising our children and working and also doing our careers, but we also know that it's not complicated, but it's beautified by the histories and generations that stood before us and their immigrational stories and their struggles. And it's just so much more rich and more beautiful to Mother Scholar in these days, knowing that strength.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I'm excited for you all to read our new piece. It's called Raising Love in a Time of Lovelessness. And it's really focused on our experiences as Pinays in the academy and also raising children. So I'm excited for that. That's going to be coming out this year at some point. So there's a lot of great things happening in the world of Pinayism, in the world of Pinayista, and we really, I from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say how much I appreciate all the work that's been done on Pinayism. 25 years ago, it's literally the 25th anniversary of Pinayism, like 25 years. I had no idea 25 years ago that, I had no idea. I had no idea there would be a Pinayista. I had no idea you all would be doing all this amazing work and writing. And so for me, this means a great deal, and my heart's really warm and full. And I just want to say thank you, Giselle, and I want to say thank you to all of the people who came onto our call, our talk show today. And I just want to say happy anniversary, Pinayism. It's definitely a celebration. Even in this time where we're struggling to find love, Pinayism is love to us. And so I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want any of the resources, everything is here. There's a video that Giselle and I did. Actually, it was a presentation at Skyline College. It was about a good 2-hour presentation if you want to know a lot more about Pinayism. And then if you want the articles and then even this slideshow, you can go to these bit.lys that Giselle created. So any last words, Giselle?
I just want to say thank you, Allyson. You have made it possible for us to even dream of a radical Pinay sisterhood. And so thank you for thinking and theorizing and imagining the space for us. And we hope to continue to grow as a Pinay sisterhood. Thank you,
Giselle. We both got COVID tests, so I'm going to hug her right now. Is that okay? I'm going to hug Giselle.